Welcome to Parasocial Tea Time, the corner of YouTube where cozy meets pop culture. We'll be diving into books, movie adaptations, analyzing shows while drinking tea and eating something delicious. Today's topic, top 3 Turkish romcoms to watch if you're brand new to Dizis. These are shows that are beginner-friendly, completely addictive, and a great introduction to why so many people get completely obsessed with Turkish TV. For each show, I'll walk you through the plot without spoilers, I'll talk about the overall vibe, what makes it worth watching, and who I think it's best for. So by the end of this video, you'll know exactly where to start. So grab some tea, grab a snack, open your notes app, or just sit back and enjoy, and let's get into it. Erkenci Kuş, also known as early bird or daydreamer in English, is an opposites attract workplace rom-com with lots of twists, slow burn romance, and a dash of mistaken identity. Erkenci Kuş follows Sanem, a young girl who has big dreams. She wants to travel and become an author, but real life, her blunt personality, and her daydreamer nature keep getting in the way of all of it. Unlike her starchy and perfectionist older sister Layla, Sanem hasn't been able to hold on to a job, much less build a career, which is why at the start of the first episode we find Sanem working at her family's bakkal, which is basically a corner store. But the thing is, Sanem's parents think that she's wasting her potential, so they pretend to arrange a marriage between Sanem and her neighbor Muzo, who is obsessed with Sanem and is also very much the comedic relief of the show. Because if Sanem is not planning to become a career woman and support herself, then marriage and kids is the only other option left, right? So they don't plan to actually go through with it. It is only meant to light a fire under Sanem's butt, and it sure does because Sanem ends up getting a job at the same advertising agency that Layla works at, and that is where Sanem meets John DeWitt. So John DeWitt is a photographer and the advertising agency's owner's son. He also looks like this. John prefers his freedom and extreme sports as opposed to suits, ties, circling back via email, and all of the other boring things that come with being in the corporate world. That being said, when family issues come into play, he ends up joining the agency anyway. He might hate it at first, but when he crosses paths with the chaotic, free-spirited, and adorably naive Sanem, something changes and their slow burn love story begins. Erkenci Kuş was a huge hit among the Turkish and international audiences, and really it's no surprise because it has all of the ingredients that make up the perfect dizi. The leads have the kind of chemistry that make you want to kick your feet and squeal. It is just so cute. There's just something about the confident, more experienced, but somewhat more emotionally closed off John falling for the slightly naive but very playful and emotional Sanem that hits the spot just right. There's a very good balance between the lighthearted plot lines and the more emotional ones. Whether it's unserious squabbles in the neighborhood, characters doing shady things behind John's back, an advertising project going completely sideways, or Sanem looking for a mystery bearded man she's fallen for and not realizing that he is much closer than she thinks, you'll get a good dose of drama in every single episode. At over 2 hours each, Erkenci Kuş episodes are much longer than the American shows you might be used to, but it's the romance, the drama, and Sanem doing ridiculous things and John finding it absolutely charming that make you finish a crazy long episode and crave more. Just like in other shows, sometimes Dizi side characters can only be there to fill the runtime but not have any actual purpose. Well, that is not the case with Erkenci Kuş. I feel like everyone will be able to find a side character that they like or can even relate to. Layla and Osman hurting because of unrequited love, Ayhan trying to come up with a new business idea pretty much every other day, JJ being his quirky self, while Deren has a near mental breakdown in almost every episode, trying to keep the agency afloat and things going right. The leads and the side characters will make you laugh, cry, and root for them, or, in the case of the villains, against them. But no matter how you feel, you will definitely be invested, I promise you that. So let's talk about the vibes of Erkenci Kuş. So while the first half of the show is very colorful, bubbly, playful, and there's definitely a lot more comedy woven into the overall plot, we do get a huge shift in the second half of the show, mainly after a monumental event that I don't want to mention because it is a major spoiler. Even though the show becomes more emotional, slightly darker, and definitely very bittersweet, there are so many iconic scenes that will absolutely make you tear up and get you all up in your feels. Come back after you've watched the movie theater scene and let me know in the comments if you sobbed like a baby because I sure did. Also, let me know what you think about John's new pirate who doesn't brush his hair anymore look. Years later, I'm still very much on the fence about it, as I think was a good chunk of the Erkenci Kuş fandom. I could not recommend Erkenci Kuş more because the premise hooks you, but it's the chemistry, the slow burn romance, the whimsy, and the heart that makes the show absolutely addictive. If Erkenci Kuş ends up being the first Dizi you watch, good luck because it will 100% turn you into a Dizi fan for life and make you want to learn your merhabas and günaydins. Kiralık aşk. Kiralık aşk, or rented love, or love for rent in English, has all the tropes, so get ready. It is a loose enemies to lovers, fake dating, hidden identity / workplace romance with plenty of secrets, pining, comedy, and deeper plot lines that add layers to the story. So what is Kiralık aşk all about? So we've got Defne Topal, a simple girl who works as a waitress. Her parents have died, and now she lives with her grandma, younger sister, and brother, who she finds out is in a ton of debt. Ömer İplikçi is a brooding, wealthy shoe designer with very refined tastes, workaholic tendencies, and a serious love of eating peanut butter straight out of the jar. When Ömer's meddling aunt Neriman makes Defne a proposition, she will pay her brother's debts if in return Defne becomes Ömer's assistant and gets him to marry her in 6 months. Defne basically thinks that these rich people are completely out of their minds, but she's also in no position to refuse. So she undergoes a major makeover, complete with a new hairdo, killer outfits, and sky-high stilettos that take some getting used to, and starts working for Ömer. At first, it is far from smooth sailing because our girl can barely use a computer, much less keep up with Ömer's crazy schedule and the fact that he is very particular about how he likes things to be. But Defne is not a quitter, and it's really fun to watch her find her bearings. But this is where things get complicated. Defne hates lying. She hates having to report back to Neriman. But what she ends up hating the most is having to keep the arrangement with Neriman a secret and try to fabricate a romance with Ömer, especially when after some time he starts falling for her and she starts falling for him right back. So the question becomes, can love flourish when it started under false pretenses? And can Ömer and Defne's relationship survive all of the secrets and outside forces that keep pulling them apart? So, why is Kiralık aşk a great Dizi for Dizi beginners? So, much like Sanem in Erkenci Kuş, Defne is a bit of a fish out of water when she first enters this new and unfamiliar world of shoes and design, which I think could be very fun for a beginner Dizi fan because most of us have felt out of place at one time or another, so I think we can definitely relate. To give you a bit of a reference point, Defne is like a slightly more mature version of Sanem, but she's equally as chatty, bubbly, and emotional, and she gets into a lot of sticky situations too, which is fun when you put her together with Ömer, who is very disciplined and somewhat reserved. You get to watch Defne peel back some of his layers and help him loosen up, while he helps to build up Defne's confidence and makes her an integral part of his life, both professional and personal, which ends up making you dread the moment when the tea will be spilled and secrets will start to inevitably coming out. The tension, the physical comedy, and Defne and Ömer's passionate romance make the show a great option if you're looking to dip your toes into the angsty and all-consuming Dizi waters. So let's talk about the characters and the acting. So I'm not going to rave about the chemistry between Daphne and Ömer because once you see them on the screen, you'll get it and you'll be obsessed with them in no time. I do have to warn you though, their very first interaction on the show is not it, so don't make any judgments based on that alone. It definitely gets better. It is just a bit of a misunderstanding. So I want to mention a few of the side characters that make this a must-see Dizi. So Neriman, who is Ömer's aunt, and Koray, the photographer who works for the fashion house, is one of the most chaotic duos I have ever seen in any Turkish rom-com. They can come off as annoying for some, but when the craziest things come out of their mouths anytime they're on screen, you just can't help but wait for their scenes with bated breath because you're like, what are they gonna say and do next? Sinan, Ömer's business partner and best friend, is a cinnamon roll of a guy and one of my favorite characters in Kiralık Aşk. I like that over the course of the show, he goes through the motions just like the leads do, and even though he's involved in drama and the secret keeping, he always means well and tries to do right by the people he cares about. Usta, Ömer's mentor, is there to offer wisdom. Daria is always there either looking for gossip or spreading it. Sude is somebody I'm very conflicted about because I've always wanted her to just do better, but then I kept getting mad at her because she wouldn't. And there is also a certain baby that is going to make you get cute aggression because he is just so freaking adorable. So let's talk about the vibes and the tone of Kiralık Aşk. With its drama, comedy, warmth, and literary references, Kiralık Aşk is a romantic comedy with layers and depth. You're cracking up at Koray's snarky comment or Daphne's reaction one minute, and can't help but swoon at the way Ömer is obsessed with Daphne the next. Also, if you're into fashion, the outfits and the shoes, are gonna make you lose your mind. There is something very cozy about the cinematography of Kiralık Aşk, the soundtrack, and the locations that we see the characters in, like Ömer's house, his office, and Daphne's house in the neighborhood. Yeah, the soundtrack is definitely amazing, and I always have a little dance party whenever the theme song pops up in my playlist. So aside from the witty dialogue, the banter, especially between Ömer and Daphne, I really like how the show was able to infuse comedy into every episode, but it never got too silly because the secrets and Daphne and Ömer's own fears and insecurities still got enough room to breathe. If you're a reader, you're going to love the literary references, and everyone will be able to relate to the deeper themes of family pressures, financial issues, fear of opening up, second chances, and trust. So, if you love stories that serve comedy, drama, secrets, fashion looks with a dash of Cinderella moments, Kiralık Aşk is definitely the show for you. Go watch it now and thank me later. So I will be including a fourth Dizi, which is an honorary mention, but the last Dizi out of the top three, which is also one of my all-time favorite Dizis, is Sen Çal Kapımı, also known as Love is in the Air or You Knock on My Door in English. So Sen Çal Kapımı is a swoony rom-com where a fake relationship between a sassy and strong-willed florist and a smug, uptight, and aloof architect turns into real love that is challenged by messy misunderstandings, love triangles, and heartbreaking twists. At the center of the action are Eda Yıldız and Serkan Bolat. Eda is a beautiful, hardworking, and spirited student who hopes to become a landscape designer, but she's not exactly rolling in money. So when she finds out that her scholarship has been revoked thanks to the hyper-controlled Serkan Bolat, she absolutely loses it. Expensive cars are scratched, sharp words are exchanged. Fate brings them back together when Eda does something quite unexpected in public that involves Serkan. In order to save his public image, get a handle on his ex-girlfriend's engagement to another guy, and ensure that the new fiancé doesn't meddle in his architecture business, Serkan proposes Eda a deal. He will reinstate her scholarship if Eda agrees to pretend to be his fiancé for 2 months. Even though Eda despises Serkan at this point, and he isn't a huge fan either, Eda agrees. But of course, through having to pretend to be engaged, spending time together, and slowly opening up to one another, the fake relationship transforms into very real feelings. So, why do I think that Sen Çalkapınar is a great dizi for beginners? So, between the fake engagement contract and kind of a low-lit conference room Serkan makes the deal in, it is all very 50 Shades of Grey. However, it is much tamer because, like most Turkish dizis, anything steamy that does go on happens behind closed doors. But the charm of the dizi is that even without showing too much, the romance and the banter are going to make you absolutely obsessed. I think that Sen Çalkapınar is a great first dizi because it's lighthearted at first, with lots of drama that gradually builds up over the course of the show. The chemistry between Eda and Serkan is one of the best I have ever seen in any dizi I've ever watched, and I've definitely watched quite a few. And the bow that ties it all together is that Ayşe Üner Kutlu, who developed the show and was one of the main writers on the show as well, put a ton of heart and care into building the love story while also layering in real-life issues like agoraphobia, losing a loved one, illness, and giving people second chances. So let's talk about the characters and the acting. So the actors fall into their roles so easily that sometimes you forget that they're not real people. Eda is adorable. I love to see her challenge Serkan, but also admit when she's bit off more than she can chew and made a mistake. Serkan starts off as a totally neurotic control freak for reasons that are revealed as the show goes on, but we get to see him change for Eda, and maybe not so much change, but come into the best version of himself when he's with her. The side characters are great as well. Eda's friend group, Fifi, Melo, Ceren, are great, even though not all of the ladies ultimately get the character development they deserve. We do have some villains, with some of them being plain evil and others too wrapped up in keeping up appearances and controlling things to realize that they're hurting our main couple. There are some short-lived but also pretty hilariously cringy additions to the cast, like the so-called Prince of Istanbul, but overall every character serves his or her purpose and they're all wonderful in their own ways. Though maybe with the exception of Selim, Balca, and Alptekin. Not a fan of any of these people. Okay, let's talk about the vibes. So Sen Çalkapınar is colorful from beginning to end, but the first season especially just screams summer, short shorts, romance, and good vibes. And also flip-flops. There is a very funny scene with Eda packing pretty much just flip-flops and shorts when she goes on a business trip with Serkan. In Sen Çalkapınar, there's even a memorable pool scene. Well, actually two, but this one is my favorite. I might not know how to ask for directions in Turkish, but I sure know how to tell somebody to drain a pool. The soundtrack is on point, and the cinematography and fashion serve every single time. I do have to be a good Samaritan and warn you that the second season, at least the start of it, will make you very, very emo. There is a big shift in the timeline. Actually, both Erken Çıkış and Sen Çalkapınar contain a certain storytelling element that many viewers were skeptical about, myself included. And as a result, there's much more drama, sadness, tears. The characters' lives are completely turned upside down, which throws the entire Sen Çalkapınar universe into a tailspin. That being said, it only makes you root for Eda and Serkan to get their happy ending even more. As a writer myself, I also love when books are mentioned or shown in TV shows. In the case of Sen Çalkapınar, there is definitely a huge The Little Prince influence throughout the entire show, with the characters even reading from the actual book at one point. P.S. That is one of my all-time favorite scenes. It is just so, so sweet. These little touches add a lot of warmth, playfulness, and romantic spice to the show, and that's why the Sen Çalkapınar fandom is alive and well to this day. So there are some potential turnoffs. If you're not ready to be mad at Serkan sometimes, even though he's the male lead in the show, this might not be the show for you. He's definitely gonna do some things that will hurt Eda and will make you as a viewer very, very upset on her and on your behalf. Other than a plot device I don't want to reveal because it is a major spoiler for what happens in season 2, I don't think there are actually any other drawbacks. So, who should watch Sen Çalkapınar? If you can't get enough of enemies to lovers, opposites attract, fake dating that leads into very real feeling stories, Sen Çalkapınar is exactly what you've been looking for. It is bright, sweet, angsty, romantic, and it will definitely make you happy you invested hours and hours into watching it by the time you get to the end. There are definitely many more shows that I could include in this video, and I'll definitely make a part 2 because I want to talk about the Turkish dramas that deserve its own video. But I want to end this video on Senden Daha Güzel. On my channel, you'll find plenty of old edits I made back when the show was airing because I was absolutely sad for it. So Senden Daha Güzel, or More Beautiful Than You, aired in June of 2022. It was short-lived because it concluded with episode 14, but the writers were surprisingly good at making do with the time they got and were able to tell a pretty complete story under the circumstances. One thing to mention about Turkish Dizis is that getting invested can be tricky business because sometimes a show starts and then it gets canceled 3 episodes later and you're like, wait a second, I got invested, what is going on? So that is why in this video I'm only talking about shows that have already wrapped up. So, Senden Daha Güzel is a romantic comedy about Efsun, a talented, down-to-earth dermatologist from a small seaside town whose life is turned upside down when she's forced to work in Istanbul alongside Emir, a very talented but also a very arrogant and kind of a womanizing plastic surgeon. What begins as a clash of egos and lifestyles slowly turns into a reluctant partnership, and then of course into an irresistible enemies to lovers romance full of banter, misunderstandings, and emotional growth. The show is great if you want to test out a Turkish rom-com but aren't ready to commit or don't have the time to binge, let's say, 52 episodes of a show. Though if you do, definitely grab your snacks and do it because you're gonna have so much fun. What makes the show stand out is that we don't have the typical power imbalance we got in the other shows I mentioned in this video. In Senden Daha Güzel, Emir and Efsun are both on pretty much equal footing. Both are educated, both have good careers, both are confident, strong, and good at what they do. The cat and mouse game they play is absolutely adorable. Cemre Bayşel, who plays Efsun, is a wonderful actress and her facial expressions are always on point. And with Emir looking like this and also complimenting Efsun in the acting department, you will eat this Dizi right up. And that wraps up my top 3 Turkish shows to watch if you're new to Dizis. If you've already seen any of these, let me know in the comments which one emotionally ruins you the worst. And if you're completely new, tell me which show you're going to be adding to your watch list as soon as you finish watching this video.